as I'm getting older, Mark, how old are you?
32.
Okay, I'm 30. As I'm getting older, I'm having a more difficult time with like time perception. Like I feel like it wants to be 5 years or 3 years or 2 years, but sometimes I say two and it's been 10. Sometimes I feel like it's been 10 and it's been two. I'm having some trouble. So maybe that's early onset dementia or I don't know. You have
I'll,
any
I'll,
trouble?
I do, but I'll tell you what I try to do is I try to link it with something else that I definitively know the date of. So like, for example, when I graduated college in 2007. So like anything like of importance that happened around that time, I can always remember it's like, oh yeah, that was like right when I graduated college. So that type of thing, or like sometimes music, like a hit song or something like that, can help me place other events with time periods like that.
Yeah, don't worry. I won't interview you about your associations with time to the Ozzy Osbourne song. Because I don't think it would be appropriate.
You know, what's funny is that is what exactly what that makes me think of is your 2005, that game Guitar Hero.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that takes me right back to playing that on Guitar Hero.
Oh, absolutely. And that, oh, Guitar Hero, those buttons and everything. That's, I can't believe it's that long ago. Wow. Wow. So you're the CEO slash CTO. I love that you wear that label, right? At Gamerwall. Can you tell everyone what's Gamerwall?
Yeah, so that's actually past tense. Gamerwall was an esports platform. We went through quite a few pivots. It started as a head-to-head cash match play service for gaming. We
Hmm.
ended up pivoting to more of a subscription-based competition platform, and then the final version that essentially was acquired was really was more of a for lack of a better word, a SaaS platform to allow other people to host their own esports events.
What's happening with you today? Are you still in gaming?
I am. So I actually just gave lunch and learn at my office here in Austin on the esports space. I'm all in on the sector as a whole, and so GamerWall was acquired in October. And actually that process is still technically in the works. It has not been fully signed on the dotted line, but the term sheets and all that stuff have been through, and we're going through the legal process of that.
So
But
much fun.
my Yeah, it's great. But my next project is called Origin, and at a high level, it's you could consider it Shopify plus LinkedIn, but specifically tailored for the esports marketplace.
And then what was with the TLD? What was with GG?
So GG is gamer lingo for good game, and so the GG domain is you know how the domains are sometimes associated with countries. GG
Always?
is
Yeah.
like is this little UK island. It's like somewhere off the coast of England, like I think it's Guarana, or I can't even remember what it is. But anyway, it's a domain for that little fiefdom that's part of the UK, and their ending is .gg. So you see a lot of the gaming companies with a .gg domain. It's just kind of it's just kind of cool, you know, kind of like .io or .ai. All the basic words are gone from .com, so you kind of have to get a little bit more creative.
Yeah, we have moderncto.io, and I'm like, no, we're not in the Indian Ocean.
Is that what people think?
No, that's the extension. Just like you have the little islands, I think it's the Indian Ocean.
Oh, really? I would have figured it was for something more specific than that, but that's awesome.
I'll tell you what, if it's not, then I will be so embarrassed. I will never forget what it is. And then we have that memory tied to this podcast, and it's all coming around. Yeah, no, I looked it up real quick. It's assigned to the British Indian Ocean Territory. All
Cool.
right, there you
Yeah.
go. Learning something new every day.
Yeah. Let's see. What is .gg is Guernsey. Guernsey.
Guernsey.
Yeah. Yeah. Same thing. Island in the British Empire.
So you're going to be a platform that's going to allow people to sell their esports. Explain this.
Yeah, so if you're creating an esports organization, and sorry, I'm going to assume you may or may not know much about the space as a whole, but I'll assume that there's at least some knowledge there. But basically, if you're going to get into the space and you're going to create an esports organization, it's really, really hard. It's just basically like starting any other business, and there's lots of aspects to it. So in theory, if you wanted to start an organization, you would be recruiting players and competing events all across the country or all across the world, and that should be your prime focus. Unfortunately, there's a lot more to it than that. You have to engage with your fans, you have to create a website, you have to manage your social profiles, you have to create graphics, you have to manage flights, you have to manage sponsors, you have to do all of these other things besides the core competency. And so the overall premise for Origin is to take those things off the plate of people wanting to get into the space and to handle that for them. So we have our short-term plan, which gets us into the market and is really not that complex or sophisticated. And then, of course, over time, we've got our larger long-term goals. But in short, the idea is to allow someone to set up their esports organization, take a load off of their plate from having to deal with all of the other stuff. And then so that's one part of it, right? That's the organization side. Then the kind of the LinkedIn component, if you will, is for individual players. So whether you're a streamer or an actual competitive player, you can kind of create your profile and have that be your home base, for lack of a better word, so that people can discover you. So for example, if I own an esports team, I don't really have too many places I can currently go to recruit players. Well, this platform, if you've already set up your team on it, it's going to be really, really easy for you to search and network with individual players to perhaps join your team. Likewise, if you're a sponsor looking to get exposure in the market via sponsoring players, you could also use our platform to browse through our network as well.
Okay, so I'm trying to wrap my head around this esports thing. I'm going to give you some of my experience here. Big gamer back when, I don't know, 15 years ago. I was playing on Xbox Connect before Xbox Live, right? I don't know if you're familiar with that, but we would all.
Oh yeah.
Okay, cool. So I was in it back then, and then Xbox Live came out, and then I got on Team Compete, and I was playing Rainbow Six 3, Call of Duty, those types of games, and I can't remember some of them, but man, they were. I'm sorry, this is nostalgia just happening to me. I'm at a loss for words. All of these things, I can still remember some of the maps of these games. It's like, oh, you got to hide behind the embassy. If you dig there's a glitch. Oh, so great. So all that's flooding my brain right now. But we would compete with each other in that fashion, then team compete, and then eventually, like way late to the game, Xbox actually came out with some sort of team management systems inside of some of their games where you could join clans and do all this stuff. Is this kind of what we're talking about, like these teams of players?
Yes, to some degree. So interestingly enough, I actually just gave a quick lunch and learn on the space as a whole. But to sum it up as briefly as I can, basically what's happened is a competitive scene has developed. There's lots of reasons for that, but the probably most important one is the proliferation of broadband internet. And so now you're starting to see games be specifically made for competition, and then you're having leagues be created around them. And so most recently, that probably gets the most media attention is the Overwatch League. Have you heard of Overwatch?
No.
So Overwatch is an Activision Blizzard game. They launched it probably 18 months ago, and there's already a league in place for it. The game was built specifically for competition, and the franchises were sold for $20 million a piece. I think there was like 17 franchises sold. So these teams are like, metaphor would be a pro sports franchise. They are out there and competing in these leagues and creating content and building up fan bases and interacting with the gaming community. And so the marketplace as a whole is just exploding at an incredible rate. In fact, I'm going to email you right now the pitch deck. Some of it won't make, not a pitch deck, sorry, just the presentation I gave. A lot of it won't necessarily make sense because it's meant to be talked through, but it'll give you an idea, and there's at least some images that will provide some context for you.
So these basically, it's just exploding from what it was. When I was experiencing it, just baby version of it, and now everyone's like becoming like, to be an esports individual is to play competitively games, correct?
Correct. And to take it a little bit further is that, to officially have that title, you probably need to actually be competing in like legitimate events, where there's like a prize pool.
Okay, so here's where it got me. Here's where it threw me from my intro into the industry back out, and then looking back on it is esports was directly tied to sports only games in my head. So that was my bad, right? So like in my head, the only time anyone would use esports is when they're playing Madden or something like that. So I'm like, wait, is this just like football? And then people keep using the words leagues, and I'm like, wait, because I don't play sports games. Sorry, I'm not interested in them at all. I'm first-person shooter guy. That's what I do, right? So when you said esports, I love that it's like the term has matured and grown and adjusted, and now it's referring to anyone who's playing digitally. Is that correct?
That's correct. And actually, it's so funny you talk about the sports games, because the guys that are so there's kind of two factors to it. One is PC gaming versus console gaming, and that is its own little section of PC gamers kind of hold their nose up at console gaming to some degree. Likewise, likewise, the people who play League of Legends, Dota, Counter-Strike, Call of Duty, Overwatch, the actual technical esports titles also kind of hold their nose up at those guys who play sports games as well.
I love how diverse it is. It's just like life, right? Like everybody segments, and then they all like, my way's better. So it's super interesting how they all are falling under the, and I love how money has gone into this. Like I love that we live in in a world where like this is a thing.
Oh man, it's not a little bit of money either. It's a whole lot. So I just shot you the deck for the presentation I gave. You don't have to like go into it in detail, but like I think the second or third page in it is a picture of Madison Square Garden. That was a League of Legends championship, sold out in 4 minutes. The entire arena is sold out to watch these kids compete.
Whoa, just to spectate.
Correct. There's way more spectators now than there are players.
Yeah, when I started playing around with Twitch, and and I noticed this is a phenomenon, like for me, that the spectator concept. And well, at the same time, I would sit there and play games all day, and people would sit on the couch and not play and watch. But I'm a player, man. I'm not a spectator. I'm a player.
Absolutely. And Twitch, man, Twitch is just got Amazon bought them for like $1 billion, maybe in 2014, I think. And talk about a steal. Twitch would probably be like at least 5 billion, if not 10 or 15 by now, if they were still a standalone service.
I saw one of the services, they stopped because of they stopped taking Bitcoin because of all the issues with the increased transaction fees and stuff like that. And I think they switched to like Ethereum or Litecoin. Does Twitch accept any of the digital currency?
That's a good question. I only subscribe to one channel on Twitch, and in fact, that one channel, actually, the guy, he's probably one of the most popular, or he is the most popular streamer on Twitch. He just had this like breakdown on his channel, and he basically admitted to like infidelity and took his stream down. So now I canceled my subscription, but mine is just with a credit card. I'm not even sure if they accept. I wouldn't be surprised if they accept Bitcoin. I think Amazon accepts Bitcoin as a whole, so I'm pretty sure that probably works.
Is the crypto a big way to communicate value or exchange value in the esports world?
It is, but I would say it's only like marginally more widespread. Like it is more widespread than just in the general population, but not that much more. I think there's kind of a misconception that if you're involved in esports, like you're more technical, but like really I have found that not to necessarily be the case, because just because you're a gamer doesn't really mean that you're into all things technology. You're typically just into like building a really awesome PC with cool components and making it look cool. And so there's a ton of potential use cases in esports for crypto, just like there is for use cases like in everything. But it's probably a little bit more widespread in the gaming industry, but not much.
Interesting. Yeah, because I mean, when it comes down to it, sports are your ability to move your body, right? And synchronization with your other body parts. And there's no computer code or anything super technical about that. You can move your body to kick a ball. You can move your body to press a button, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, look at here. It looks like I'm opening the PDF you sent. It looks like close to $1 billion in esports revenue streams globally. That's gonna kick up a lot. That definitely is. That's not nearly.
On one of the slides right before that, I just made up a graph. I'm like, we love up and to the right. I mean, in Dex, you can just put like a generic like hockey stick curve for basically everything.
Oh my God, your handle's cash flow. Yes. You like the Cubs too, it looks like. Oh man, that's great.
I'm a huge Cubs fan. Cash flow has been my. It's so funny, my email address is cash flow. It was when I'm on the interwebs in general, I just have everyone refer to me as cash flow. And so, it's kind of funny. It took me a while to like fully commit to that, especially like, I'm going to send my email to a really sophisticated investor at, Andreessen Horowitz or something. And they're going to be like, wow, this guy is an idiot. But you know what? I said, look, I'm in the gaming space. If someone doesn't like it that I use my gaming handle as, my email, well, then they're probably just not a good fit for me anyway. But yeah, I went all in, and I just, some people call me Mark in real life, but on the internet, it's cash flow.
No, that's awesome. And honestly, you have to stand out and differentiate yourself. And if you can do that without negatively affecting your brand, then it's usually a good differentiator, right? So it's not some sexual name, right? It's not some sort of offensive name. And actually, if I'm an investor and I'm going to invest in any gamer handle ever, I want his name to be cash flow, because cash flow is on his mind. He wants to generate revenue.
What's so awesome is on Instagram, like I have that name with like no letters or numbers or anything. So like I get randomly tagged all the time by either people misspelling the real word or whatever. But I'm still amazed that I have it on Instagram without any letters or numbers, right? It's really hard to do now.
Yeah. Oh, of course it is. And that's how you tell who the real OGs are, right? Like when you have a gamer tag or a handle that is not all leaded up, you know that person's been around on the platform a while.
Exactly.
Oh, but now the kids these days, they have it so spoiled. They actually like join dates when you click on their profile. We used to do it the old way. Like it's like the people they would tell their positioning based on the night stars. Like we'd have to tell how advanced someone is based on their gamer tag.
Yeah.
Now they just go to their profile, see their points.
Yeah, be like, follow me on Twitter at Joel. They'd be like, oh my God, this guy created Twitter.
I know. It's like how Gary Vee has at Gary. It's like, oh,
yeah, right.
So like that's amazing. You like him?
Yeah, I do. It's probably impossible to be paying attention to social media today and not have stumbled across Gary Vee. And so I do like him. I mean, if anything, golly, the guy is just, he puts out a lot of content, doesn't he?
He puts out a lot of content. You apply any of his heuristics or ideas to what you're doing with the esports?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that I don't know that I inherited this from Gary Vee, but he probably like reinforced it, is that I've always been kind of a like grip it and rip it guy. And so like, I will think about something for a little bit, and then if I think it's a good idea, like I am going to do it. I have a severe bias towards action, which sometimes can be detrimental. I'm not, it definitely can hurt sometimes to be that like that. But I will get into something and go full speed ahead pretty quickly. So he kind of emphasizes that as well. And then I'd say the other thing that I kind of get reinforced from him is that I don't really have any no natural talents or abilities. Like almost everything that I do or that I might even be considered good at, like I really had to grind to get it. And so like I'm a big believer in one foot in front of the other, and you must, you don't stay the same. You either get a little bit worse or you get a little bit better every day. And so, like repeated pounding at the door is something that I really hold to, right? I mean, I will keep going till I get there.
Nice. You're persistent. I often like to say Gary Vee's my spirit animal.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a bad trait to have. I mean, he's probably pretty demonstrative, and the way he does things is very much him, but there's certainly a lot to be taken away from it that can help a lot of people, and I'm pretty sure he does help a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. I have here on my notes that you've got some experience with this MVP epidemic.
Yeah, so that's actually how you and I met in the first place,
Yeah.
chatting it up on the interweb. So good job
Oh,
on
no
your
way!
content.
You're one of we were talking in the comments?
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
So good job on your content marketing, because you targeted me, who is a CTO, and was on a topic that is like very relevant to me. And so you scooped me up in that net very effectively, and here we are today.
It's all about bringing that value, though. Like that's all I want to do with this. I'm not looking for money. I'm looking to bring just tons of value and kind of, I can't go back in time and help myself 10 years ago and give myself advice, right? Like I can't do that. But there's another generation coming up, and it's only growing and it's only getting bigger. There's only more technology people coming. And like you can see with the growth in even your industry and every other one that's powered by technology, which is basically everything, right? And then I want to give all those individuals value so that they can at least, you can't do the work for them, but you can kind of, give them your experience and say, look, here's what I did and here's how it turned out. And so, there's your value, right?
For sure. So what our conversation got, how our conversation got started is you had posted the article about the spaghetti code MVP and how basically people are launching a product and they're basically masking like this crappy code base, like with the excuse that it's the MVP, right?
Yeah.
And I totally agree with that. Like, I think that is an actual thing that is happening all too frequently. So what got me involved in the conversation was that for that specifically, I think the context of where that idea or product or company is in their life cycle is like very relevant to evaluating how much of you is like actually making an excuse for crappy code versus like actually trying to get something out there. Because for me, I know, so we are supposed to launch on January 1st, and we're behind. We're going to launch a week late, which, in the grand scheme of things, not that big of a deal. But like I can definitively tell you right now that our code base is not an amazing, like it is not like this like perfect machine of well documented and perfectly running code. Like we are going so fast right now because I need to get a product out into the market so that I can start building things based off what I know people need and like versus what I think they do, right? Because right now, the concept is what I think people will like. But until it's out there and I have 100, 500, 1,000 people using it and getting feedback, like I don't even know if what I'm building is the right thing yet. And so, for me, I could sit here and right now I could delay launch by a month and go back and clean up and like refactor and make our code way better. But like I'm actively choosing not to do that right now because for all I know, in 6 weeks or 2 months from now, we might be like, okay, like here's the feedback we've gotten. And to touch on another topic that you have written about, let's just go ahead and rewrite this whole thing now because we have much more intelligence on what we actually need to be making.
Okay, so I love that you're bringing this up. This is going to be good. We're going to disagree, agree, and then love each other and high five. All right, so there's 2 points. The first one is just a counter argument to doing things right the first time. So, and I'll explain. So, if you had, and I don't know your composition of your development team. I don't even want to know right now if you're an engineer. Like, I don't want to know. But if you had the like great people doing it right, then I submit to you that you wouldn't need to have major rewrites and need to even think about going back and cleaning it up. The second point would be involving it. This is a thing that I do, and this is a mistake. So here's a mistake I was making, and here's what the end result was, the value that came out of it. I was building stuff and then bringing it out to people and saying, what do you think? What do you think? And then getting feedback and going. I was able to shorten that life cycle by first going out to the people, bringing them into the like sort of sketching, wireframing design, and figuring it out. Then I was able to skip a development cycle by actually not making the product and instead doing it with sketches and saying, all right, this is what we're going to do. How's that going to be useful? Oh, well, I don't want that. I want this, things like of that nature. So that was like a little trick I accidentally stumbled into. And now that's how I always do it.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
I think that's fantastic. So, the first thing you mentioned about being built right the first time, I 100% agree with that. The caveat there is that specifically what you're building from the get-go. So for example, we started this project probably 10 weeks ago, but our scope has changed for several different reasons, but our scope has changed between when we first started and today. And so that, of course, can make things a little bit more complicated. And then to your point about the second part about like going out and designing, that's almost exactly what I did. I took wireframes out. I said, hey guys, what do you think about this? What are the things you need? But to some degree, there was only like, I probably spoke with maybe like, I don't know, call it 55 or 60 people that I either reached out directly to on Twitter or in a Facebook group or something like that. And that was like the basis for a lot of what we are currently making. But and I think that's really great. And hopefully that does save us some time in the long run. But like in terms of getting to, significant growth stage or like meaningful revenue or whatever, those are kind of our particular metrics, but whatever you're trying to get to, depending on what your price point is and all that stuff, again, even with 75 people, you may or may not have made something that's actually going to have product market fit, like right as soon as you build it. Right. I mean, it'd be awesome if you made something like right away and it's like, yeah, this is perfect when we build it the first time. I am probably not smart enough to do that.
Well, yeah, and it's all a conversation, right? And it's just we're two completely different people just trying to bring it together and bring value. So one point I like to make after having those comments in the Spaghetti Code MVP is I like to detach the quality of the code versus the value of the features that you're bringing to market. I look at them separately. So like I can have a completely solid code base that's done reasonably well, right? That's reasonably maintained and reasonable quality, balanced with time, budget, and skills, right? And then that I look at that detached from the features that will make my application bring value to the market. Because in my mind, they're separate.
That's an interesting concept. I don't think I've ever articulated that concept in my head before. So that's interesting.
Yeah, because everyone merges them together.
Mm-hmm.
And so that actually, like, I didn't realize, I didn't have that explanation until just now. That was like on the fly, but that is what I felt inside. That's like what I felt inside for so long. And Thank you, Mark, for letting me get it out.
Sorry, hold on. You need to write that down. And that is a great little piece of short form content for an
Right?
Instagram post right there. That's a little chunk of gold right there.
Done. No, so then I think also with you in the market, man, 75 people, that's a lot. That's great. I think that when you go through that, that was the most right thing to do. And I would be surprised if you were able to identify value that you bring into the market, and then you're able to build a version one and then bring it out into the market to like test it and let people use it and it not bring value, right?
Correct. Yes, that is fingers crossed. Yes.
So I don't think it's fingers crossed. I think it's like logical. If you went out and you surveyed the market and you said, all right, well, here's where the value needs to be brought, right? Here's where we bring significant value. Here's the gap that we're filling, the need that we're solving, right? And then you go build it, you will have a reasonable amount of success. I think the big variables there is how scalable is it in this, not in the sense of the code structure. How scalable is it in the sense of a problem? Like how big is the problem? So if you go to, design a tool that is only ever sellable to 40 people on this planet, you could have 100% market penetration and like not be a company. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess it depends on how much you charge them, right? If if it's $1 million a year, then that might be a decent company. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
Right. Or maybe it's collectively you're charging them 10 grand a year, but your costs on it are 1,000. It's still a business. It's massively profitable, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Kind of what you're touching on there is, it's so funny because like you go and you talk. I talked to so many people, and so many people have so many different opinions, and yet we're all our own person in the world. And like ultimately, like until we actually get in there and start mixing it up and doing it, like all of the things that come around, like are it's so hard to take advice, especially from like all these brilliant people. So like, for example, Warren Buffett and like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, these guys talk about focus so much as like a thing, right? Yet at the same time, as the CTO slash main, I own the entire company, right? I'm funding it all and everything. Like I'm in charge of everything. Like I quite literally can't focus on like such a singular thing. And I'm using focus as an example, tying back into all the stuff you hear. And so in regards to the market size and opportunity, the general, I guess, strategy, and then we can talk about the individual tactics here, but the general strategy is like, look, I don't think the first version of my concept is like enough to capture this massive market share and be this billion-dollar company. But I also know that we have to start somewhere. And if we try to go too global from the get-go, we might go horizontal instead of going vertical. And so like my tactics are based on the idea that I need to embed myself deeply vertical. It's like starting with some things that potentially don't even scale, right? We've got this software platform, but like there's going to be a lot of agency type services that we're offering because like I have to like get people to love the brand. Like I will bend over backwards and like spend way too much time on a single customer to make sure that like the brand and myself goes like deep there. And then like, now 6 months, a year out, yes, I have those big stretch goals and like grand ideas that are always there. And we periodically check to make sure we are working towards that. But it's kind of like a fine line, right? I mean, if you go too wide, then you risk like never getting any penetration anywhere. And if you go too deep without that grand idea, to your point, you've got a product for $10 a month and you're servicing 40 people who actually find value in it, which it just doesn't leave you much room to grow. So yeah, it's just, there's so many things to like factor and do. And golly, just talking about it makes me realize why it's really hard to be an entrepreneur.
Well, let's
right?
simple it up. Yeah, I agree. It's super difficult, but let's step outside of it and see how we can simplify it so that we can actually, get things done. right? Like with all the distractions and all the shiny objects, where do we place our focus? And that's exactly what these billionaires that you referenced are bringing up. So here's how I do it, and it's by no means perfect. So I have this belief, this thing that I found to be true, that the only reason business exists is, and the only way it can exist is by bringing value to a market. So now we have this like real simple concept, like Elon Musk's first principles, that we can then reason up for. Like we know that that is true. There's no healthy companies that are able to exist long term that do not bring value to the market. They all do in some way. You just have to figure out what type of value that is, right? So
Correct.
if you look at it from that perspective, I can look at any company and I could say basically if they have problems, and looking at companies with problems and looking at companies that are new and want to get funded are two things that I do a lot with some venture capital groups. So I always go in there with the same thing. I say, what is the market? And I use this analogy. I say, you have a lemonade stand, right, Mark? You have a lemonade stand. You got two options. The first option is you can build the lemonade stand in a field where there is a path, and then you can go put a sign on the path and convince people to walk over into your big empty grass field and purchase some lemonade. That's option one. Option two is you can find a crowd of people, burrow your way through the center of the crowd, and construct a lemonade stand. Which do you prefer? You prefer the second one because it's distribution's the hardest problem anyone ever has.
Right.
If you put that lemonade stand in the middle of that crowd, right, then you are solving your distribution problem. And so that's what I like to talk about distribution when you're identifying a market. That's what I talk about. How, find that market, find where all the eyeballs are. Gary Vee says, if find where all the attention is, and then place yourself, create value that can be injected into the existing market rather than trying to create your own market. So the way you could, the second part of that would be like when you talk about the business, the lemonade stand, that's when you have to identify the value. So the first thing I like to do is identify the group of people and the general idea. So like if I were like esports company, I'd say, okay, well, I want to do something in esports, and here's the group of people, and there's a large group of these people, and you even sent me demographics, like how many there are. And now I want to go stand in the center of them and start talking to them and find out what's the common theme between all of them. Where's the place where I can bring them value? And then once I figure out how to bring them value, then it's just an execution thing. Because we're relying on these basic first principles of thinking, we understand the principles of business, and that if you bring value into a market and the market deems it valuable, they will consume it. And then everything else is sort of like, fairly easy in the sense that you just have to execute it. Right? What do you think of that?
Man, I think it's so spot on, and I'll be gosh darned if you didn't. I go through. I'm like a roller coaster, right? Like I'll go
Right.
through like periods where I'm like real stressed out, and then like I'll have conversations like these, or like thought processes like these that like bring me back down to earth, and I'm like, okay, we're good. So I agree with pretty much everything you said, and it actually leads me to wonder. So going back to all the information that swirls around all the things. So the phrase "build it and they will come," I have no idea how that phrase is still uttered, because it's just so not true in my experience. It's build it and then make sure millions or billions of people know about it, and then they will come. like build
Exactly.
it, like it's like I don't understand how "build it and they will come" is still a phrase that's even spoken, because like distribution is the key, right? Yeah, if we all had unlimited marketing budgets, distribution's probably not that hard. But when you're on like a shoestring budget and you're trying to bootstrap a startup, like how can you actually get distribution like effectively and like get a massive bang for your buck is huge. And so for Origin, I am like 95% confident that our current model will provide value for people and will be used. The existing options are not like super great. And so yeah, I mean, I think you're really spot on there.
Yeah. So So for each business that I'm a part of, I have in my mind, there's one thing. There's only one thing. There's one macro value that they bring. Okay. And then whenever there's stress or I get calls from the CTOs or I get calls from the people and they say, oh, we're stressed about this, that, or that. I say, look, all right, deep breath time. What's the one thing that you do? Like, what is the reason that your company exists? We go back to that one piece of macro value and just say, look, in the long term scheme of things, like, does this really matter? Like, are you hitting that value? Like, take your focus off the details of what's going wrong and put it back on the value, and then see if those little things that are going wrong even matter. Like, do I need to put my time to this? Everything that we do, when we have a list of projects up on a whiteboard right now, and we say, whenever we put them up, we have tons of ideas, we get distracted, we're like little shiny objects everywhere, and then we're constantly, taking things off the list and saying, no, 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 because it doesn't match the one piece of value. And if it doesn't match the one thing we're trying to do, then we don't do it. And that's because if you go back to it, the only reason that the company can exist is by bringing value to the market. Now, another thing for marketing budget, so you're lean, right? You're a startup. Well, we can leverage the human experience because humans make human decisions, right? Most purchases are made emotional and not logical, right? So they do things human ways. And one thing that humans do is they talk. Information can spread like wildfire through a network at an unbelievable rate, right? And that's free, right? So all you kind of have to do is spark the wildfire. So if your value is good enough, if your business is relevant enough, if what you're trying to bring to market really has value, rather than you trying to convince the market that what you're doing has value, if it really has value, most of the marketing will take care of itself. You just have to do a few basic things and get that spark going. And John's going to tell Mary, who's going to tell Sue, who's going to tell Mike, and everyone's going to be like, you have to hear about esports. I'll tell you what, if any of these large companies that have distribution soft, if PlayStation does something, they're a $100 press release away from the world knowing about it because they have distribution. But let me tell you what, if they did something that did not bring value, they put a press release out that did not bring value, we changed the color of our coffee mugs at PlayStation, it's going to go nowhere. The information will not travel because it's not relevant. It doesn't bring value to the market, and the market will spread the information. So when I talk to people who have ideas for things, I say, instead of having an idea for something, like, have a need for something. Like, come to me with a need that's in the market. Say that this market is underserved. There's this need. We need to bring this value. That's way better than like an idea to test or try. Because if the market already needs it, then it's way easier to build it and distribute it to the market. Yeah,
very, very, very true.
So what is it for your, like, what's the, not to put you on the spot. What's the value that you guys bring?
This is I'm glad you asked, because I am prepared for that type of question. But Origin allows you to build your esports empire in 5 minutes or less. So in 5 minutes or less, you can get the basic structure and setup for your esports organization done.
So is that like, if I want to be if I want to own, explain, you gotta give me some more, I gotta understand better. So if I want to start an esports organization, like have players that like I represent, like I'm a sports manager?
Yeah, so back to the industry as a whole. So if you wanted to create an esports team, right, you are going to have to create a brand, just like the Philadelphia 76ers, for example, and you're gonna have to get players, and you're gonna have to figure out a way, are they gonna play for you for free? Or are you gonna pay them? And you're gonna have to get those players to competitions. Then you're gonna have to create content around your brand. Then you're gonna have to distribute your brand message and do all of the things that are basically required almost for any other company, except this one is just a specific franchise in the esports world. And so going back to what the value is for Origin, and potentially initially doing a lot of things that probably don't scale in an effort to go deep, go vertical instead of horizontal, is let us take care of all of that stuff. Right? Like you'll set up your platform with us. You need graphics. great, we can handle that for now. This is not really a long-term plan, but as an agency, we can create graphics for you if you need them. Like all of that stuff that you like is tremendously stressful, especially if your main focus should be on recruiting good players and practicing and getting those guys to competitions. Like we handle everything else for you. And so yeah, like I think a good example, pull up rocketsesports.com. These guys will likely be one of our first customers. Like they're not on the platform yet. We're not quite, like I said, we're a little bit behind on launch, but they'll be one of our first customers. And you can see their existing platform, and like they used Shopify for it. It's not bad. It's okay. It's pretty good. But they had to do all that stuff custom because Shopify doesn't, it's not made for it. It's not made for esports. And so.
Oh, is this for the team to kind of like represent their victories themselves, or so? Explain Rockets. What is Rockets?
Rockets is an esports organization. I think they've got a PUBG team. You can see if you click teams, it'll show you what teams they have on there. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're consider them like, they're not a tier 1 organization. They're not like an NFL franchise, but consider them like a minor league baseball club, right? So
no way. Now I get it.
Yeah. And so they, they go around, they compete, like they want to become an NFL franchise. Like that's their ultimate goal. And so Origin's ultimate goal is to help them do that. And so as you can see right here, like on their site, like they handle all of that stuff in-house. Like them having to deal with everything that you see on that platform takes away from their core competency.
Interesting. I'm liking this now. All right, there's a problem that it took that long for us to communicate this. I'll send you some notes after the show. Because like all of a sudden, boom, it clicked. Like I got it. I get what you're doing, right?
Yeah. So like if you know nothing about the esports industry as a whole, it's very difficult to wrap your head around. I've had this. It's so funny with GamerWall. We spent way more time talking about the industry than we ever talked about like what we were doing inside the industry. And so yeah. So what you're seeing right there is like the Shopify portion of it, right? Mm-hmm. The part that you're not seeing there is the LinkedIn part of it. And to be honest, I really hate like using those types like that, like
I get it.
We're the Uber for like.
I just cringed. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like doing that. But like at the same time, I'll be darned if there's like sometimes when you're talking, it like happens to be like pretty effective at getting the general concept across. But anyway, I won't even say the LinkedIn part, but whatever. The social side of it is that, okay, so they have these rosters of players, right? So those guys are on this team currently, but there's thousands or millions of like free agent players that are out there. Like who's representing them? Like if I want to go peruse a list of players that need to join a team, like how do I find them? Where are they? I don't know. Like doesn't really exist. And so like that's kind of the a little bit longer term goal. We will start building that stuff here in the next like week or so, and hopefully have that piece done by Feb 1. But that's kind of where we're going, right? So you have the organization side, you have the individual side, and then those two are very commingled together. It makes it really, really easy. And then, ideally we become one of those companies that we're in the space like relatively early in its growth cycle, which is always good. But then two, like as we like our priority is to make sure that our customers are successful, right? Like I want our customers, like if Origin doesn't have 50 teams be bought for $10 million or more in the next 10 years, I'll consider this a failure. Our goal is to make sure that we have teams that grow fast and they grow well, and we make it as simple as possible for them. Golly, I just lost my train of thought. I got so pumped up about getting those teams successful. I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, here's a question I have for you. I'm going to change it a little bit. We have the organization, like the Rockets, right? Yep. And then we have the organization beneath them in the hierarchy is the collection of teams. Mm-hmm. So one value you have is you provide sort of this, I'm going to say the word consulting style boot up of a esports organization. And another thing you're looking to provide is a recruitment solution for all the players that exist.
Correct.
Those are the kind of like the two core things that you guys are looking at. And then the consultant move, that platform would look more like brand creation, communication of results from the team, right? Like, here's my team, here's my players, here's their stats, and then here's my messaging. And that way they can look like the 800-pound gorilla, right?
Yep, exactly.
And so that's what your platform's kind of geared towards right now.
Correct.
Okay, good. See, I'm getting it, man. I'm not dumb. I'm getting it. Platform. Yeah. So that's what the platform you built today. What got this whole thing started was the writing the code to do something along that nature, that route, right?
Correct.
Cool. And then you shocked me a little bit with the recruitment concept. So there's not a place, there's not like a free agent roster that's cross-platform, cross-game, cross-industry.
There's a couple things out there, but there's just nothing that's like really like done it right. Like it's wide open. It'd be like the like Priceline websites like back in 1997. Like, yeah, sure, there's probably a couple of them around, but like I don't really, competition's never something that really bothers me. Like, I'm more likely to kill this company from way more things besides competition. But in general, I try to avoid competition when I can. And so, yeah, that particular service is just, there's definitely no, if you were to ask 100 esports teams or players, like where they would go to do that, you'd probably get 100 different answers.
Oh, so there's like there's lots of different places to go to do it.
Yeah, like, but not like made for it specifically. Like, they might hop on Reddit, they might go to Twitter, they might go to Facebook. Like, there's not a ton of options like that, or platforms made specifically for that. No.
There's no recruitment platform that's like for all the esport players.
Not really, no.
Okay. Well, I'm not being a dick, but is it not really, or is there one? Is there one?
Yeah, there are companies that are doing that, but they don't have any decent market share, I guess is what I'm saying.
So they're failing from a business. They have the technical platform to enter the data, but they don't have the numbers and the brand reputation.
Correct.
So there's the marketing play there. All right, now here's a question. How many potential customers do you think exist in your initial platform, the consultant? Like, how many of these people are actually trying to create these organizations that have teams? How many of those people are there?
Yeah, so for one thing's really important. That number is like growing super duper fast. But in terms of a flat number, I put that around 500,000, 500,000. Of those, I anticipate that maybe 20 to 30% of them would actually like fall into the paid sales funnel, right? Because the kind of, I think it might have been on your blog actually that I read it, like it's just really hard to win like the feature war game, right? Because like there's just like, I'm not smart enough to create like truly patentable like technology. And so we're trying to avoid like feature wars. And so like our pricing model is not going to be based on features. Like, everyone who signs up gets the full suite of features that we have available. Our pricing model is based on usage. So of those, we're kind of anticipating like on a rolling basis, maybe 20% of them actually like falling into the paid category.
Interesting. So you got 500,000 people out there that are trying to create these organizations to have teams, like these entrepreneurial type people who want to create these brands and have teams under them. Of that, maybe 20, 30% are seriously like have some cash to start the organization.
Yeah, and I mean our pricing is most likely going to be around $50 a month. So like it's not like when you say have the cash, like quite literally, yes, have the cash. Like we're not talking about, arms and legs here. $50 a month to like host the platform, and everything that we're going to be offering for esports specifically is like, we might move that up or down a little bit, but it'll be right around there, which, hopefully that's not too much of a deal breaker for people that are like, yeah, we actually like want our own domain instead of a subdomain.
Oh yeah, and be able to hook it up. So that's the platform that you built then.
Correct.
Oh, great. So that's smart. I like that. I believe that those numbers are real. Yeah, that looks good. Do you guys have a free version to collect those other 400,
Yeah.
300,000 people?
Yeah, the entire platform's free. So one decision that we just made recently was we are not going to do like Google AdSense on the free platform. Like there's not going to be any of those like cheesy ads even on the free platform. What we are going to do is, it's funny about this. I'm like telling you everything we're doing here, but I don't even care because ideas are like a dime a dozen. Anyone else listening to this in the future, hey, if you want to take the same idea and run with it, let's go. I don't even care.
Yeah, good luck. Bring the value,
Yeah, exactly. Like I'll take myself on an execution race any day. But anyway, so what we're gonna do is, so a big part of an esports team is gathering sponsors. So one of our kind of consultancy agency services that we're actually have a plan to automate once we get a little bit more feedback will be like helping these people acquire sponsors. So when you're in the position that you're actually ready to get a sponsor, that also means that you're most likely ready to start paying for the platform. And so all of our free tier websites will have sponsors sections, like who they're sponsored by, but that's controlled by us. When they upgrade to a paid plan, they control that section and can put whatever sponsors they want there. So they could easily get a sponsorship for $5K a month from Razer Mouse Company or whatever, and then put that logo there, and they're only paying us $50 a month, right? Sweet deal. Whereas the free people will have, they'll still have those same sections to display their sponsors. But like I said, we control that. So let's say that we have 50,000 free accounts, active accounts that are doing this. Well, we're going to know a couple things about these people. We're going to know what kind of games they have. We're going to know what their rosters look like. We're going to have a little bit of data on their behavior and stuff. So we, as the owner of all that stuff, or the superseding agency above it all, can go out and go to sponsors ourselves and be like, hey, you want to be displayed on 30,000 of our esports teams pages, right? And we will sell those spots ourselves. And we, that's going to be a little bit harder to like start creating revenue than it would be if we just like plugged in Google AdSense or one of those other
but
like
don't
ad
do it
platforms.
though. Yeah, never do that.
No. Yeah, no. We're not going to do it. And so yeah, that's kind of like the revenue model for the free, so we can actually cover our server costs for all the people that are using the free stuff.
So here's an idea. Bring in value as much as I can. So there's this guy who has a podcast, and he is a popular musician, and I can't remember his name right now, but he produces music as well, and he started a podcast, and he's got a notable name, and what he does is he brings young emerging artists onto the show, and he interviews them and he talks with them, and 80% of them just pass through. But what he does is he signs some of them that he really likes. So he gets to talk to them, he gets to interview them, whatever, hears their music, talks everything. And then his business is really like, there's no ads on the podcast. It's very smart. But what he's really doing is he's creating a funnel by providing them value, a platform to speak. And then he learns them, provides himself value by learning them and, experiencing what they're like as artists. And then the ones that he likes, he cherry picks and signs them and actually puts them on a label and like gets them some money, right? Very interesting.
So what you're talking about right now, that's so interesting you bring that up. I was having lunch a couple of weeks ago with a buddy, and I was talking to him how I see a really strong opportunity to invest in esports teams that aren't quite at the major level yet. There's like so much arbitrage at the secondary level that I think there's a really good opportunity to make money if you can make a decisive, like choose your metrics that you're judging these teams by wisely. And so I kind of use Salesforce as an example. How great would it be if you're in a private equity company and you own also, let's say you're Mark Benioff, for example, and you can dig into Salesforce's data to see all the underlying data that all of these companies that use Salesforce. So if I'm trying to buy a company and they use Salesforce, I would love to have an inside peek at what it looks like under the hood in their Salesforce deal. Same idea with Origin, right? If we have 30,000 esports orgs, to your point, we're going to have a lot of insight on what I think and the company thinks and anyone else who's involved with it thinks are the best teams that might be worth acquiring or signing to a label or whatever we decide to do there. But yeah, that is a really that's a really great concept that I think has almost unlimited upside, assuming that we can get to that first part, which is actually getting all those customers in the first place.
Yeah, and how do you do that?
Well, one step at a time. You know, the first step is getting one. We've done that. So then the next step is getting to 10, right? That's not much harder. If you can get one, you can get 10. If you can get 10, you can for sure get 100. And if you can get 100, you can get 1,000. So we're like, I think we've got like maybe like 15, or I can't remember how many we actually have like actually signed up, like using it, our very first version, which was kind of crappy. And so we're redoing it. That's why the launch is a little bit delayed, but then we've got tons of people who were interested in signing up. And so I did like a kind of a what do you call it? Yeah.
Pre-registration type thing.
Yeah, pre-registration. So I've got maybe like 150 individuals on that list. And so, yeah, to your point about growth, you know, word of mouth is something that we'll rely on a lot. But in the meantime, you know, the amount of customers that we're looking for to like validate this concept is not so huge that it's like out of this world crazy, right? You know, if we're 6 months down the road and I can't get 1,000 people to be like actively engaged with this thing, then like, you know, I'm going to really, really sit down and rethink everything through quite a few times. But yeah, in regards to gathering customers, initially it's going to be a very, very manual process, which I personally, you know, enjoy quite a bit.
Yeah, well, it's again, like I don't think you'll get to that 1,000 people and they're not engaged, because from each individual that comes onto your platform, the only reason why they're going there is because you're providing them some sort of value. And then it's just up to you to screw it up, to you to not deliver on the value that they anticipated, because everyone anticipates a value before they sign up. No one signs up for anything just to sign up. They think, oh, there's some value here. I'm going to sign up and create an account because there's a need that I have, and this looks like it provides value to my need, right? It's the answer to my need. And then it's identifying and removing the distance between those points to make sure that what they anticipated is what happened, right? So,
yep.
Because that's the value. They anticipate a certain value, and then they take action, and they either get that value and they're a huge fan, or they don't get that value and they die off. So just focusing on that part right there, that little slim area is really the difference between the success and the failure.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm such a sandbagger. The amount of value that I've promised is way less than what we're planning on delivering. And so, you know, looking back on GamerWall, one thing that I wish we had done a better job of was like staying more in touch with our customers in terms of what we were working on. And so I'm pretty excited to use like a public. I can't remember the company that I saw that was doing this, but I was like, wow, that's really cool. They had a public Trello board. I use Jira for our stuff, but we'll have a public Trello board that kind of shows what we're working on. Because, you know, the idea here is like, we're going to constantly, like, we are working on behalf of the teams that sign up with our service. Like I am working for them to make sure that they are successful. So like in quite live time, like right now we don't even have a test server, right? Like this is getting pushed to production. Let's go, go, go. So like these guys, like for example, our first early customers, like, hey, it would be really cool if we had this. I'm like, done. 2 days later, like, hey guys, guess what? It's up. Check it out. Like, customers love that.
Excellent. We are over our time, but I like talking to you though, Mark. This is
Man, I
good.
appreciate it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it as well. I listen to the Night Speed, Night Speed, right? Yeah, Night
Yeah.
Speed. Yeah, I listen to the Night Speed podcast. It's so funny listening to the guy. There's so many of this like similar. It's we're all just anyone that's doing similar stuff. Like we all encounter the same problem. So your podcast and the content you put out is pretty helpful.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I actually saw that email come across like 2 a.m. We had like a thunderstorm and I was like, oh, I'm not sleeping. So I look it up and I'm like, oh, sweet. Listen to Doug's podcast. There we go.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh, fantastic. Yeah. So, man, we learned a lot. Gary Vee's my spirit animal. You understand the MVP epidemic. You guys are bringing massive value to the esports industry and you're making sure that everything you do continually brings value to your users. I wish you the most success in your launch and then your follow-up of the recruitment idea. And yeah, it was absolutely fantastic.
Man, I appreciate it. Real quick, what was that little chunk of gold? It was, oh yeah, separating the quality of the code versus the actual features that the users experience. Those are two separate things. That was great.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there we go. Awesome. Thank you so much, man. And we're in
Absolutely.
Florida, by the way. We're in Florida, so like I think we're even on the same time zone. So.
Nah, I'm Central Time. I'm in Texas.
Oh, okay.
But I'm always online. So I just live on Discord and Slack and all that stuff. So I'm sure